before, we are LifeTec, and we are a not-for-profit organization that is there to provide information, education, and advice on assistive technologies. And when we are talking about assistive technologies, it doesn't always have to be a piece of equipment. They can also be things like integrated design, as well as systems where enable someone to participate, as well as to do things that they may not be able to do previously. So with assistive technology, it can cover a whole range of different devices and also designs as well. It's not just about electronic or computer type of system. A lot of people have that misconception that technology, because of the term technology there, they automatically associate assistive technology as something computer-based or electronic-based, but actually it can cover quite a fair bit of things. So from things like wheelchairs, whether it is used for mobility or whether it is used to compete in sports, recreational aids, for example, like in this case, large playing cards, where the person who may have vision impairment can still see and can still participate in, say, activities with friends and family. And of course, vocational aids as well to assist someone to participate in their workplace and also obviously continue their contribution to their organization as well. Things like communication, as well as learning and literacy support systems as well. So looking into whether it is communication devices or whether it is software solutions that can provide similar functions. And of course, in terms of mobility, whether it is transferred inside into a vehicle or whether it is, say, modified vehicle so that the person can still access their personal transport. And of course, telecommunication these days is one of a major areas that we look into as well, from landline all the way to mobile, to smartphones, to your tablets, and those kind of things. And sometimes it doesn't have to be something elaborated as well. It can be something as simple as a socket donor, which can make a lot of difference in people's quality of life. And just saying that, LifeTec as an organization, we are leaders at the forefront of assistive technology through education, research, and partnerships. So we partner with quite a fair bit of different organizations, from service provider to education institutions, as well as obviously different departments as well within the government system to look into provide information, education, and also partnership and research as well. And we are a team of health professionals ranging from physiotherapists, occupational therapists, to speech pathologists here at LifeTec, and we do have two different interactive display centers here in Brisbane, as well as one in Townsville, which is in the north. So we do have quite a lot of feedback from different clients. For example, there was one client that actually mentioned how impressive it is to actually see all these assistive technology in one place. And the idea is so that people can actually try them out, see how they work, and then they can make an informed decision to choose the most appropriate piece of assistive technology to enable them to live independently and also improve their quality of life. Now, for those who may have difficulty accessing our center, we do have our inquiries hotline as well, where you can speak to one of our therapists in terms of the questions that you may have, or in terms of things like if you are looking for a certain piece of equipment but you don't know where to start with, then you can have a chat with one of us and we can then guide you to the right direction. Then, of course, there is our outreach service as well. We cover all the way from Cape to the Southwest. So we try to reach each region at least once every year so that they can still access our services even though they may be in a regional area. And we do provide education services as well, for example, like different webinars, like this one that you're participating in, as well as in services and also things like professional workshops as well. And for those who may not have used our website, it is quite useful as well. You can find our quarterly review, which is our newsletter, there, as well as some information fact sheets on different assistive technology as well. For those who are therapists, as well as for those who are clients, you may be looking into a certain type of device, or you may just want to have some general information on a specific type of equipment as well. Then this is a really good starting point where you can look into different types of equipment that is available, different features, as well as considerations that you have to bear in mind when you are looking for one of these items. Then, of course, there is our product database as well on our website, which gives you the free product search function. This allows you to access quite a large range of different assistive technology in the market, and I believe we have over 1,500 of them here in our display center, but we have more than 5,000 of them on our database. So if you want to have a look into those things, then it is quite a good option to not just see the pictures of them, but also to compare in terms of their features and what they can do and how they can assist you in this area. Then, of course, there is our outreach schedule, which gives you an idea in terms of when we will be visiting a certain region within a year. So if you know someone who may be in the regional area, then this can be something quite useful as well. At the end, we do have our education calendar there, so in case of any events or new workshops or webinars, you can find them there, and that will give you also the opportunity to sign up there as well. So for those who may not have known, about our website, it is definitely worth going into it and have a look into that. And I guess today's topic is really on video games, and the reason why this topic is such an interesting topic is the fact that video games has become a lot more mainstream these days, and it is actually a bigger industry than the movie industry. For example, one of the games, Call of Duty 4, if I'm correct, has recently surpassed any movie grossing in the history. So obviously, this is quite a large area and large thing that is happening, and which is why we are looking into it. And I guess for someone with some level of interest in interacting with others, say, others in a virtual environment as well, video games is also a really great platform to do so. And of course, the ability to explore worlds that is different from what we are in is another draw card as well for a lot of people. But anyways, I guess when we are talking about video games, a lot of people would immediately think about something like Super Mario or some of these traditional arcade adventure kind of game where you will have to jump over different obstacles or complete different quests in order to complete the game itself. But besides these games, there are lots of other different types of games these days. For example, pretty sure that everyone knows what this is. You can find quite a variety of new arcade games with different play style as well. For example, in Angry Bird, where you have to throw your bird to certain targets and complete missions that are in front of you. Now, just saying that the change in play style and also genre actually affects the gameplay quite a fair bit, and it can be quite a substantial factor when we are considering gaming accessibility. So do bear them in mind as we go through them. Now, besides this type of, I guess, some of the light or arcade type of game, there are a lot of other genre as well. For example, things like sports game or sports simulation type of game, from golf to basketball to football to different type of sports that are out there. Can also be something that is quite interesting to someone who may have, say, physical disabilities or so on. And of course, there are role-play games where the player basically plays a different role in the game itself as compared to who they are in reality. So, for example, World of Warcraft, where you can play different type of characters, whether an elf or whether an orc or those kind of things. So it definitely can be quite interesting for some people as well. And of course, there are some more traditional type of games like first-person shooters, or things like simulation games like racing or aircraft simulation and those kind of things. And of course, at the end of the day, there are also strategy games as well, where basically think of it as an evolution from the traditional desktop board game. But even though there are so many different genres there, there are still common factors that you can find within all these different games out there, across all these different play styles, as well as across all the different storylines that they may have. When you're looking into video games, basically there are three, I would say, challenges that they present to a user. Firstly is timing accuracy of a movement. For example, when you're playing Super Mario, you have to jump, you have to press the jump button at precisely a certain moment so that you can either jump onto the platform or crush the monsters or those kind of things. So timing precision is definitely a very important factor when we are looking into video games, whether it is this type of arcade games or whether it is things like a racing game where the user has to press the steering buttons or turn the steering wheel precisely at a certain time to ensure that the vehicle goes the way that they want to. Then the other factor to consider is the precision of movement as well. For those who have played Angry Birds before, you would have noticed that even just a slight change in the degree of the projectile, it can mean whether you can go through that particular stage or not. And it is the same for lots of other games as well. For example, in the first-person shooter game, the aiming, the ability to aim at the target precisely is definitely one of the main factors when playing these kind of games. Then, of course, the other task, maybe a bit less about movement, but more about planning. So being able to manage all those different tasks and objectives that is presented in front of the player, as well as the ability to formulate a plan to tackle all those things, certainly can be, I guess, another challenge that video games present to their players. And a lot of times, this type of planning and problem-solving type of task is integral into the game itself. So it's not something that you can take away from or eliminate. So in conclusion, there are three types of challenges that one may face when they are accessing their, when they are playing a game, not so much accessing a game. So firstly, as I mentioned before, timing. When to hit the jump button, when to steer a vehicle, etc. Second is the precision of the person's movement or the character's movement. Aiming your weapon precisely on the target, and also things like directing your character to move to places that you want them to as well. Then the last one is planning and problem solving. What should be my next move? How do I manage multiple targets or objectives? And those kind of things are very cognitively demanding tasks at times. So those three are some of the things that you do have to bear in mind when you are looking into accessibility of games, because it's not just about physical access itself. And a lot of times when we look into games or video gaming, people would be thinking about either the Xbox, PlayStation, or Wii, which are some of the more popular video game consoles out there. But also remember that there are some other platforms that people play their video games on as well. For example, there are quite a substantial amount of people actually play their video games on their computers or PC. And that does have their own advantage as well when we look into that a little bit later. But certainly that is one of the platform that you will see out there when it comes to video games. The other one recently as well, in the past 5 years or so, a lot of games have been developed for our smartphones and also tablets on these type of mobile devices. So again, another type of platform and another different type of challenge that one will face as well, whether it is physical access or things like looking into small targets and also small fonts and small prints on the small display as well. So there are a few efforts that the industry has put in over the years in terms of developing some of those games, video games that may be more accessible. For example, on the left-hand side here, you'll see this logo from a company called Namco in Japan, which a few years back they have started this initiative to develop barrier-free entertainment. Now, this is, I guess, this is not an industrial standard or those kind of things. It's just that within that company, they have labeled certain games to be accessible and so on and so forth. However, in the past 2 or 3 years or so, we have seen much less of these labels being, I guess, placed or being used on their games as well. So not quite sure what's going on there, but it seems like they may have stopped this initiative there. And on the right-hand side here, you can see a logo that is developed again by another group, another organization to denote accessible gaming. This organization is in the UK. However, again, even though this is an open, open standard they do have developed some open standard or guideline for accessible gaming, but this logo or this particular initiative hasn't really taken off either. So quite interesting to see that even though there were some experiments as well as some initiatives within the industry itself, there are actually no existing standards when it comes to accessible gaming. If you think about how big the industry is compared to, say, even the movie industry or the cinema industry, it's quite interesting to see how we still do not have any standards when it comes to gaming accessibility. So I guess when we are looking into accessible gaming, a lot of people would immediately be looking into physical access and also potential mobility as well in that area. But when it comes to accessibility for gaming, it's not just about physical access. There are also other factors that can prevent or can become barrier for someone to access their video games as well. For example, vision, hearing, as well as cognitive side of it as well. So definitely, these are some of the areas that we do need to look into, and we'll explore some of the things that you will need to look into when you are either choosing your own games or when you are looking for a game that is suitable for your clients. So I guess when we look into physical access, you guys probably want to know what is available locally. And quite a bit of you guys will be thinking about, okay, if I'm someone who has difficulty using, say, the game controller from a video game console, I can probably look into using a Switch with Switch interface and those kind of things. And these things are available from suppliers locally, which is great. And some of you may be even thinking about things like joystick mouse or adaptive mouse alternatives, or even things like head tracking devices or eye tracking devices as well. These are all well and good, and they are all available from suppliers locally. But with any of these systems or any of these access devices, you do have to use a PC or a computer in order for them to work. But what if I'm not a PC gamer? What if I use one of these? Say, for example, for someone who uses video consoles, video gaming consoles, then the access needs and also the equipment that is required can be really different. Let's look at what is available instead, I guess. Starting from, I guess, something that is a bit more basic, there are Switch adaptive gaming controller. Unfortunately, there isn't really one available in Australia. So you do have to get into your supplier to see whether they can modify this for you, or you may be able to contact places like TADQ who may be able to adapt that for you, depending on the controller itself. Now, on this particular controller, these 4 switch jacks are designed to replicate the functionality of these 4 buttons here. So obviously, this can be somewhat limiting for the client in terms, or the user, in terms of how they can participate in the game itself, but at least that will give them some level of participation when it comes to their video games. While they may still need to be assisted by someone else for the other controls, they can still take control over certain functions within the game itself. For those who may be using one hand, there is also this one-hand ergonomic palm game controller. Quite a long one name, but basically it is a video game controller that is designed to give the user complete control of a video game controller just using one hand. The idea behind it is that all of these controls and buttons are placed ergonomically within the reach of someone's palm. So you have both analog joysticks around it for, to control direction as well as viewpoints, all the different action buttons as well as directional pads as well. For someone who may have, say, who may have a bad hand, or one of their hands may be affected by certain conditions like stroke or brain injury, then this can be quite a good option to consider. And the good thing about it is that it's also programmable, so that you can use that for PlayStation and Xbox and PC as well at the same time. Unfortunately, this device is not available in Australia from local suppliers, so you do have to order them from the States, and it costs around $250 US. If you're working with someone who may have, say, difficulty with the fine motor movement with the fingers, then there are also this type of access devices or specialized controllers available as well. So for example, this device called the Ultimate Arcade 2, which costs around US $1,000, it does give the person the complete control as a standard gaming controller, but with all the buttons being fist accessible. And it also has two integrated stick-up switch built, one integrated stick-up switch built into it as well, if the person requires that. This unit is called the Ultimate Arcade 2. So, another interesting feature behind it is that the unit can also be programmed for additional functions as well. For example, if someone has difficulty managing a few buttons at the same time, you can program in certain macro or certain functions, so that, for example, in a racing game, the person can activate automatic acceleration and those kind of things, while the user can then focus on the directional control of the device or of the vehicle. It will work with PS3, Xbox, as well as PC. Now that, if you are working with someone who may require the use of chin control, there are also these type of devices as well, which is designed to be accessed by someone who primarily uses their chin to control the joysticks as well as the buttons for the controller. So this unit has two integrated stick-up switches as well, which are here and here. And there is also another latching top switch on the joysticks itself as well, plus 4 chin accessible buttons. So that gives the person quite a good level of control that replicates a standard video game controller, but at the same time is accessible using their chin. If you're working with someone who may have, say, who may require a more customized solution, there are also these type of device as well, which is a modularized video game controller. So the idea is that instead of providing the person with switches and joysticks that are already attached onto the controller itself, you can plug in different switches as well as different joysticks and those kind of things directly onto the device. And of course, that means you can then customize the devices customize the access devices for the person individually. Now, this can be quite useful if, say, the system is being used by a range of multiple users. It can also be useful if, say, the person is having a progressive condition as well, where their access needs may change over time. Now, just saying that if you have any questions regarding the presentation, we do have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So you can, if you have any questions or so on, we will then address that at that point of time. Now, with these particular devices, whether it is the one that you have seen just now, or whether it is the one that you see here, the versatility, all of them will work with PS3, Xbox, and PC. Now, the supplier did not mention about Mac. I guess there are a few reasons behind it is because, firstly, in terms of gaming on Mac, there isn't really a lot of there isn't really as many titles or as many games as compared to the other platform. The other thing is the programming software that they use probably will only run on PC. So that's why it is likely that the supplier has not included such compatibility there. But even though if the person has complete access to these devices, and that enables them to be able to control the games as they want to their full potential, that doesn't mean that the video games immediately become accessible. It's not that simple. Remember what we talked about in terms of the free tasks that, or free challenges that most games will present to the user. In terms of timing accuracy, precision movement, as well as planning and problem solving. If you have a look into them, you'll notice that they are not exactly that directly related to physical access itself. A lot of these challenges, which can be part of the game itself, actually lies within the software, which is the game, how they were programmed, how they were coded, and the features that is built into them. So when you are looking for a video game title for someone who may have difficulty when it comes to physical access, it's really important to look into not just the physical controller, but also at the same time looking for a video game that is fitting or appropriate when it comes to accessible features as well. For example, some of the features that you may want to look into can include macro. For those who do not know what macro is, basically macro is the ability for someone to sequence a set of inputs, whether it is buttons, joystick, or keys on the keyboard, and have that sequence play back or record at the press of a button. And it is really useful if, say, the person has slow movements or may not be able to, say, press all these different controls at once and so on and so forth. So looking for games that support the use of macro definitely can be something that beneficial in those scenarios. And of course, there are also some of the games that may have sensitivity, input sensitivity adjustment built into them as well. Again, for someone who may have difficulty with fine motor control, or for someone who may have, say, tremor or those kind of things, that can be quite a good option to look into. Some of the games these days even have customizable controls as well, so that the person can redirect, say, a button or a control that they may have difficulty accessing to another physical control on the controller or on another piece of equipment. When it comes to some of the newer games, for example, some of the newer computer games, or especially those that are designed to be played online, a lot of them do have what they call anti-cheating system, or some of them even have some sort of digital rights management system built into them as well. The idea is to prevent people from cheating in this type of somewhat competitive environment. But at the same time, a lot of these systems actually interfere with the use of third-party access devices. For example, for someone who uses an on-screen keyboard, or for example, someone who uses an eye gaze system, I've actually seen quite a few games will stop the user from playing them when they're using those systems because they mistakenly label those access devices as cheating. So you do have to be very careful when you're looking for games if the person who is using them uses a third-party access device compared to the standard controller. And of course, when it comes to physical access as well, the ability to adjust the game speed is definitely a plus. So when we are looking into some of those games these days, you can actually slow them down so that the person has more time to execute the movements that they want to without being penalized because they may take a bit more time in order to press certain buttons and so on and so forth in the game. And of course, at the end of the day, there are also some newer features built into some of the games these days. For example, in this game, you can find something called aim assistance. Basically, that means in this shooting game, the person, the computer will automatically help the player to target the next, or to aim for the next target that is within the range of the player. There are also some other assistance built into other type of games as well. For example, like in some of the racing games, you will be able to find things like steer assistance, so that the person just has to manage the acceleration or deceleration, and some of them may come with things like brake assistance or acceleration assistance, so that the person can just has to take control of the directional control on the vehicle. So all these are designed to, I guess, simplify the control interface and also help the user to navigate around them a lot easier. Then, of course, as we mentioned previously, besides physical access, there are also other areas as well. Now, we'll just cover them briefly today, but if you have any further questions on them, do feel free to get in touch with us or ask us at the end of this session as well. So what we are going to cover at the moment is vision. If you are working with someone who may have color blindness or some level of vision impairment, sometimes if you have colors that are similar to each other, or if you have, say, graphics that are not exactly that high contrast, it can be quite difficult for someone to see what is happening on the screen itself. However, there are some of these games these days. For example, you can change the color of certain on-screen elements, whether it is from white to red to blue to green, or so on and so forth, so that it's easier, and you can also create high contrast versions of some of them in some of those games out there as well. As an example, this particular game here, you see a tank on the screen. Now, you notice that the color of the tank is quite similar to its surrounding because of the camouflage. However, in this game, you can enable a function so that the outline of the enemy tank will be labeled in red, so that even though it may be difficult to see without this outline, someone who has vision impairment may find it a bit easier to see where the enemy tank is because of this high contrast outline compared to the background. And of course, these features can be quite useful in scenarios like this, but you do have to look into the details of the game to see whether such a feature exists within the game that you are looking for. And the other thing is, if the person has difficulty, say, with reading or with small characters being displayed on the screen, then some of these games can be quite difficult for them to use, because with some of the older games, especially those on smaller screens, like like those on a mobile phone or portable gaming console, they tend to use text to represent dialogue between characters and those kind of things. And it can be really difficult for someone to use them if they have difficulty reading them. However, some of the newer games these days, they do have voice output, which basically gives you basically reads out the text on the screen itself to enable someone who may have difficulty reading to continue playing and participating in the game itself. On the flip side, for those who may have hearing impairments, there are also other things that you can find on games that can be quite useful for them as well when it comes to looking into, I guess, making them being able to be aware of what is happening around them. So, for example, in traditional shooting games, you'll notice that people have to judge where the enemy is coming from by listening to the footsteps or shots that is being, the direction of the shots that is being fired. However, in some of the games these days, you'll notice that they may also come with visual representation in terms of where the shots were fired from as well. For example, in this particular scenario, the tank in question, it is being shot from a few different directions. And the user, even though they may not be able to hear the sound of the shell, they can still be able to identify where they're coming from using all these on-screen elements there. So see the red indicator as well as the direction that they're pointing to. The other thing is a lot of games these days also have things like closed captions for dialogues within the game, and also a lot of times they may also give the person visual information about what they are supposed to be doing as well, or the objectives, so that they can still participate in the game even though they may have difficulty hearing what is going on out there. The idea of that is to give them I guess, better situation awareness when it comes to playing different these type of games and when they're interacting with in-game elements. There is also another type of feedback as well that gamers can get from their devices. How many of you guys have heard about DualShock? For those who may not know about or may not have heard of this particular term before, it basically is a term that Sony has coined up when they started to put vibration feedback into their game controllers. So you can now find them not just on PlayStation, but also things for smartphones, as well as on other gaming consoles as well. The idea of it is, if the person, say, is driving over, say, rough terrain or so on, the controller will start to vibrate according to the movement of the vehicle. Or say in a shooting game where, say, if the user was being shot by the enemy, the controller will then start to vibrate as well, depending on the level of damage. The idea is, again, to give the user another channel in terms of feedback through this type of haptic feedback where the user can sense via their tactile sensation. I guess the last thing that we're going to look into today is the cognitive side of it as well, in terms of some of the tasks that, especially when we were talking about, especially when we were talking about some of the things that one has to look into when they're playing the video games, which is the planning as well as problem solving type of activity. So when it comes to this type of, I guess, challenges or tasks that is presented to the player, there are a few things that you can a few features that you can look into within a game itself that may help when it comes to accessibility as well. Firstly, some of the games allows the person to adjust the level of difficulty. The idea is to reduce the complexity of the task so that the task becomes less cognitively demanding and allow the person to manage that a lot easier. And you can find a lot of these in different games as well. If you're working with someone, or if you have difficulty remembering what exactly is going on within a game, or certain information that is given to you, then some of the games also provide what we call persistent information or persistent objectives, or those kind of things being displayed on the screen. The idea is that having those being displayed on the screen means that the person can always go back and refer to those information without having to worry about forgetting them. The other interesting feature in this particular game that I'm displaying is also the use of non-verbal or graphical instructions as well. So, for example, in this particular game, the person has to look to the marked position and detect the enemy. Now, if you are working with someone who may have difficulty reading or understanding written words, then the photo or the picture that is underneath that, which shows the player's character as well as the targeting location, will give them a good level of information in terms of what they are supposed to be doing. Then, of course, when you're looking for games, the ability to, again, change the game speed or pace can be quite useful, because that gives more time for the person to actually process all the information and formulate a plan to cope with the situation that is presented in front of them. And some of the games even have a pause button so that the person can stop, think through their action, their course of action before they continue their game. And all these features can be extremely useful for someone who is looking at a game that's some sort of video games that is a little bit less cognitively demanding. Now, I guess just to look into some of the resources that are available out there as well when it comes to gaming accessibility, what I find quite good as a resource is this particular website. Is gameaccessibilityguidelines.com. So it is still a bit of a work in progress, but what they do is they've listed different level of accessibility features from basic to intermediate to advanced, depending on how much adaptation and changes that is required for that particular user. So you can go to this website and they will be able to give you quite a fair bit of ideas in terms of features that is required if you are selecting a game and those kind of things. However, because it is developed more towards a tool for game designers instead of just end users, so there isn't really much reference to, say, games that are commercially available. And I guess that's one of the drawbacks there. And that's where this particular website comes in. So this is the Able Gamers community website, which is based in the States. Now, the good thing about this is this particular website, it is quite an active community, and they do have sections specifically looking into different types of disabilities, as well as allowing users to actually discuss some of the things together. For example, like Grand Theft Auto 5, which has recently been released, and someone is already talking about how to make that accessible when it comes to the physical controls on this particular game. The other interesting part is on the side there, you'll notice that there is a section called Latest Accessibility Reviews. So they do game reviews as well, and in there you'll notice that they will give a score when it comes to how accessible the game is. And they will also discuss the accessibility features that you will be able to find within the game itself. So this type of information sometimes can be a bit difficult to find on the manufacturers or the supplier's websites. However, on this website, you can find that quite easily. And generally, that is quite a good starting point if you are looking for an accessible game itself. Now, just remember that the website is community.ablegamers.com. If you just type ablegamers.com, it will bring you to the corporate website of Able Gamers Foundation instead of the community portal. The other document that I find quite useful is called Includification, a Practical Guide to Game Accessibility. This particular document is prepared by the Able Gamers Foundation. However, it does have a lot of different case study and different user scenarios. So that can be quite useful if you are looking specifically for that, even though it is designed more towards the general game developer type of community. But it is still quite a good thing to look into. You can find this document at includification.com, which is listed there. All right, so I guess we'll draw to an end. However, before we finish, just want to give you guys a bit of an open invitation to our Brisbane as well as Townsville Display Center as well. We are open to the public from Monday to Friday from 8:30 to 4:30, as well as on Saturday from 9 to 2. So if you want to say have a look into some of the different assistive technologies that we have on display, as well as a few other equipment, or maybe have a chat with some of us here in terms of different questions that you may have, you are more than welcome to do so. And at the bottom there, you can also find our enquiries hotline number as well, which is the 1300-885-886 number. And that will allow you to speak to one of our therapists directly, so that if you have any questions, they can then answer you in that regard. Now, I'll just open up the floor to you guys. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask and bring them out as well. Okay, I've got a question in terms of whether we have any of these assistive technologies on display in Brisbane. Now, in terms of the specialist gaming controllers, unfortunately, because they are not available in Australia, so we do not have them. However, we do have some other gaming controllers that are designed to that can be used in conjunction with, say, a computer, for example, like eye tracking systems that can work with computer games, or things like head tracking systems as well. And of course, we also have a brain-computer interface on display where the person can control computer games using their brain waves. So I have a question here as well, asking about in terms of making online or player versus player computer games to be more to be easier for someone to use if they have difficulty in terms of if they have cognitive difficulties or disabilities when it comes to accessing those games. Unfortunately, there isn't really I guess, specific server or those kind of things designed for people with disabilities on these type of games. However, there are some games that has been available, that is on some online games that are available that also have quite a fair bit of accessibility features built in. I guess one of the biggest difficulty when it comes to these type of games, online games, is that the person is not just interacting with a pre-programmed character, the person is actually interacting with other players that is using the same software at the same time. So the experience and also the, I guess, the gaming experience itself can vary depending on who is actually using that computer, that video game software at that point of time. I guess that is something that we as an industry, we as a profession, as well as those who, as well as gamers who may have a disability, need to continue to advocate so that the video games industry can look into maybe making some adjustments in these areas. But unfortunately, as far as I know, there isn't such server or system available on any of those games yet. Yep, thank you for your comments, and I've got a comment there in terms of looking into referrals for adaptations and controls, but definitely I believe that is something that PADQ and some other organizations may be able to assist with. So if Camila, you can have a chat with some of your volunteers, that would be definitely something fantastic. All right, is there any other questions that you may have questions about? If not, what I'll do is I'll just close this session, and if you have any questions, do feel free to get in touch with us, and also to and you can also come to our display center as well and have a chat with us as well. All right, thank you for attending today's session, and I hope this is useful for you. See y'all.